The first decade after Christ, 1 to 10 AD, was a time of transition and great transformations in the ancient world. The Roman Empire reached the height of its power under Emperor Augustus, ushering in an era of internal peace known as the Pax Romana. Meanwhile, Eastern dynasties faced dramatic crises and shifts, and key events from this period would profoundly influence the course of history in the centuries to come. From Rome's political stability to rebellions and radical reforms in far-flung provinces or in imperial China, the years 1 to 10 AD offer a fascinating glimpse into the dawn of our era. We will chronologically explore the most significant international events of this decade, covering various domains: politics and imperial successions, wars and uprisings, cultural and literary discoveries, natural disasters, and social developments. Each event will be presented in its historical and geographical context, introducing the main figures involved, examining how matters unfolded, and analyzing both the immediate and long-term consequences for humanity. The tone will be balanced, blending the rigor of historical facts with dramatic and emotional elements that relay the story of these years and sustain engagement throughout. Let us now journey back to the beginning of the Christian era, the year 1 AD, to discover how the world looked 2 millennia ago and to identify the defining events of the first Christian decade. In the year 1 AD, the Roman Empire dominated the Mediterranean sphere, enjoying the solid authority of Augustus, the first Roman emperor. Augustus, known in his youth as Octavian, had established a new political regime, presented as a restoration of traditional Roman values. He received the title Pater Patriae, Father of the Fatherland, and initiated reforms that laid the foundation for what historians call the Pax Romana, about 2 centuries of relative peace and prosperity. The doors of the Temple of Janus in Rome, symbolizing war and peace, had been closed multiple times during his reign, marking the end of the internal conflicts that had plagued Rome in the previous century. This peace was, of course, maintained by the power of the Roman legions. On the empire's borders, the army continued to guard frontier regions and carry out missions against external tribes whenever necessary. In Central Europe, Rome had already extended its influence over the Germanic tribes up to the Rhine and Danube rivers, with some tribes becoming allies or client states. In the east, the Parthian Empire offered a counterbalance to Roman power, yielding a sort of uneasy equilibrium after a treaty ended earlier conflicts. Besides this diplomatic success, Augustus managed to recover the legionary standards lost years before in battles against the Parthians. In East Asia, in distant China, the Han dynasty reigned. Around this period, however, the imperial court was riven by political infighting. Emperor Ai had died, and his successor, a child, Emperor Ping, was under the regency of the influential official Wang Mang. The Han Empire was still formidable, though on the brink of a crisis that would soon shake its existing order. In India, various regional kingdoms and empires coexisted. In the northwest, remnants of Hellenistic realms established after Alexander the Great's conquest still lingered, but the end of these small states was drawing near. At the eastern edge of the Roman Empire, in the province of Judea, still indirectly ruled at the turn of the decade by the Herodian dynasty, Jesus of Nazareth had recently been born, an event unnoticed by the major powers of the day but destined for enormous spiritual impact a few decades later. Thus, at the dawn of the new era, the world was a mix of imperial stability and simmering tensions. In the sections that follow, we will see how, against this backdrop, a series of events left lasting marks on history. From political decisions at the heart of the Roman Empire to revolts on its frontiers and significant dynastic changes in the Far East. The year 4 AD marked a critical juncture for the internal politics of the Roman Empire. Emperor Augustus, already advanced in age, had no biological son to succeed him. He had adopted his grandsons Gaius and Lucius Caesar, promoting them vigorously as future heirs. Fate, however, was cruel to these imperial designs. Lucius died in 2 AD, and Gaius died soon afterward in early 4 AD due to injuries he had sustained in a military campaign in the east. With both adopted sons gone, Augustus had to find a new solution to the succession problem. Quickly. Hence, in 4 AD, Augustus adopted his stepson, Tiberius Claudius Nero, known simply as Tiberius. Tiberius already possessed military and administrative experience, proving himself a capable general. Furthermore, Augustus compelled Tiberius to adopt, in turn, Germanicus, Tiberius's nephew and Augustus's great-nephew, to secure the next generation of the imperial family. Through these adoptions, the regime sought to maintain political stability at Rome's summit, aware that the absence of a clearly designated heir could trigger a political crisis or even civil wars. For Tiberius, this moment signaled his definitive return to Augustus's inner circle. In previous years, Tiberius had exiled himself on the island of Rhodes, disgruntled that Augustus prioritized his younger grandsons in the line of succession. Yet tragic circumstances made Tiberius the only viable option as heir. Consequently, he was granted several honors and extraordinary powers, nearly matching those of the emperor, thereby consolidating his position for an eventual transition of authority. On the long term, this change had profound consequences. When Augustus died in 14 AD, Tiberius became emperor without significant opposition, ensuring the continuity and stability of the Roman state. The fact that his adoption took place in 4 AD was pivotal for preventing a potential succession crisis and preserving internal peace in Rome, still fragile after a century of civil wars in the past. In 6 AD, the Middle Eastern province of Judea underwent momentous changes. Until then, Judea had been ruled by the sons of Herod the Great, reigning as client kings under Rome. One of these sons, Archelaus, had the title of ethnarch over Judea, Samaria, and Idumea, but his brutal and inept governance sparked deep discontent among the Jewish population. Consequently, Emperor Augustus decided to depose Archelaus and bring Judea under direct Roman rule. Thus, in 6 AD, his territories were annexed to form the new Roman province called Judea. To incorporate the new province into the Roman fiscal system, the authorities ordered a census for tax assessment. The governor of Syria, Publius Sulpicius Quirinius, was charged with overseeing this effort. Although such censuses were common in Roman provinces, in Judea it triggered fierce opposition, as many Jews regarded it immoral to pay tribute to a pagan emperor and deemed these taxes a possible breach of their religious laws. A charismatic leader, Judas of Galilee, launched a movement of civil disobedience and revolt, urging the populace to reject both the census and any payment to the Roman occupiers. This uprising was swiftly crushed by Roman forces, but its aftermath was far-reaching. Rome installed a prefect or procurator, under the authority of the governor of Syria, to govern the province directly. In Judean collective memory, the census and the revolt led by Judas of Galilee left a lasting impression. Discontent at Roman rule and the imposed taxes continued to fuel tensions that would flare up later in major conflicts, such as the First Jewish-Roman War, 66 to 70 AD, culminating in the destruction of the Temple in Jerusalem. These events are also referenced in subsequent religious writings, highlighting the deeply rooted social and spiritual trauma they imposed. Also in 6 AD, thousands of miles to the northwest, the Roman Empire faced a major military threat in the Balkans. What started as a local uprising in the province of Illyricum, roughly corresponding to modern-day Bosnia, Croatia, and Serbia, quickly erupted into a large-scale war against Roman authority, known as the Great Illyrian Revolt. This conflict lasted from 6 to 9 AD and severely tested Rome's capacity to maintain unity. The revolt's origins are linked to Emperor Augustus's plans to extend Rome's frontier beyond the Danube into lands inhabited by Germanic tribes. General Tiberius, already adopted as Augustus's son and heir, was preparing to attack the strong kingdom led by Maroboduus, chieftain of the Marcomanni in Bohemia. The governor of Illyricum, Marcus Valerius Messala, was tasked with raising additional troops from local tribes to support the campaign. However, the demands for recruits, along with the associated burden of providing supplies, inflamed local tempers. Illyrian tribes, embittered by Roman exploitation and rising taxes, united under two leaders both called Bateau, one from the Diocitiates tribe, the other from the Bruci, rallying nearly all the local populations to revolt. Their strategy aimed at something extremely daring: attacking Italy directly from the northeast via the Julian Alps, while simultaneously striking the province of Macedonia in the south. The Romans feared the rebels could penetrate the Italian peninsula within a matter of days. Augustus ordered a massive mobilization. He called up reservists, granted freedom to slaves who enlisted, and dispatched additional troops to quell the rebellion. Tiberius had to abandon plans against Maroboduus to focus entirely on the Illyricum conflict. The war devolved into a grueling campaign that lasted years. The terrain, marked by rugged mountains and dense forests, favored local resistance. Tiberius avoided any single decisive pitched battle, preferring to sap the revolt with blockades, relentless raids, and scorched earth tactics. The Romans took heavy losses, and at one point even Rome faced famine due to disrupted supply lines. Yet slowly, the Illyrians' momentum waned. Tensions arose between the two leaders, Bateau of the Bruci and Bateau of the Diocitiates, undermining rebel unity. The former was defeated and captured, while the latter fought on in the Dalmatian mountains until finally succumbing in 9 AD. Rome exacted a brutal reprisal on the local tribes. Many were uprooted or sold into slavery. The province of Illyricum was administratively reorganized and split, leading later to the provinces of Pannonia and Dalmatia, aimed at preventing any massive coalition of native populations. From Rome's perspective, the revolt was a stark reminder of the empire's fragility, even under the outward stability of the Pax Romana. Barely a year later, in 9 AD, another disaster, the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, would strike the Roman army on its northern frontier, proving that although Rome was vast, it could not be everywhere at once. The year 8 AD also brought a dramatic cultural event: the exile of the poet Publius Ovidus Naso, known as Ovid, by Emperor Augustus to Tomis on the western Black Sea coast, present-day Constanza, in Romania. Ovid was among the foremost poets of Rome's Golden Age, alongside Virgil and Horace. He was famous for works such as Metamorphoses and Ars Amatoria, explorations of love and mythology that catapulted him into the spotlight of Roman society. Suddenly, in the autumn of 8 AD, Ovid was banished to Tomis, a decision made personally by Augustus. In his writings from exile, Tristia and Epistolae ex Ponto, the poet claimed his punishment was the result of a poem and a mistake, Carmen et error, without explaining these matters in detail. Historians suspect that Ars Amatoria contradicted Augustus's moral reforms aimed at restoring family values and social sobriety. As for the mistake, speculation abounds that Ovid may have been entangled in the scandals involving Julia, the emperor's daughter, or that he had discovered compromising secrets about the imperial family. Life in Tomis proved harsh. In his letters, Ovid depicted frigid winters, language barriers, and the absence of the refined intellectual circles he had known in Rome. Yet he continued to write, leaving behind a poignant testimony of his suffering. He vainly hoped that Augustus, and later his successor Tiberius, would allow him to return to Rome. Such a pardon never arrived. The poet died in Tomis, likely around 17 or 18 AD, leaving an enduring literary legacy. Ovid's exile is a striking example of how harshly Augustus could wield power culturally, not just politically or militarily. For posterity, it serves as a cautionary tale of how freedom of expression could collide with the will of an absolute ruler, despite the seemingly idyllic peace the Pax Romana projected. In the autumn of 9 AD, the Roman Empire suffered one of its greatest defeats. A defeat so catastrophic that it would prove decisive in halting Roman ambitions of expansion into Central Europe. This was the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, where Germanic tribes led by the chieftain Arminius annihilated 3 Roman legions and their auxiliary forces. The outcome essentially ended Rome's plan to turn the lands between the Rhine and Elbe rivers into a province. The context: after Caesar conquered Gaul, Rome advanced beyond the Rhine, with several of Augustus's commanders seeking to subdue the Germanic tribes. Publius Quinctilius Varus, a politician of consular rank and Augustus's relative by marriage, had been appointed governor in the newly conquered territories broadly called Germania. Varus believed himself in a relatively peaceful province, but the growing resentment against Roman taxes and abuses led the tribes to plan a revolt. Arminius, a noble of the Cherusci people who had served in the Roman army, knew legionary tactics and was thus able to orchestrate a devastating ambush. In September of 9 AD, Varus marched with 3 legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, through a forested and marshy region of Germania, today identified near Cochries in Lower Saxony. The official purpose was to suppress a supposed local rebellion, but it turned out to be a trap. The Germanic tribes launched a surprise attack on terrain where Rome's extended marching column could not properly maneuver. Over 3 days of torrential rain and guerrilla assaults, nearly every Roman soldier was killed or captured. Realizing total defeat, Varus took his own life. The few survivors fled westward, carrying the grim news back to Rome. Upon hearing of this disaster, Emperor Augustus was said to have been seized by despair, supposedly crying out, "Varus, give me back my legions!" Encapsulating Rome's profound shock. The 3 destroyed legions were never reconstituted. Their numbers were struck from the rolls. Strategically, Rome subsequently opted to remain west of the Rhine and refrain from deeper penetration into Germanic territory. Thus, the Teutoburg Forest battle effectively set the boundary along the Rhine for centuries, leaving most Germanic tribes outside Roman domination. This event greatly enhanced Arminius's standing among the Germanic peoples, making him a legendary hero who defended barbarian freedom against the world's mightiest empire. For Rome, it ranked among its most humiliating and costly military defeats, shattering the illusion of the legion's invincibility. Only months before, Tiberius had just barely suppressed the Great Illyrian Revolt. Losing more legions in the north underscored once again the limits of Rome's military resources and the vulnerability of an empire that tried to rule vast and varied territories. While the Roman Empire reeled from the rout in the Teutoburg Forest, a similarly dramatic upheaval shook China. The usurpation of the Han dynasty thrown by an ambitious official named Wang Mang. The Han dynasty had begun in 206 BC and brought stability and prosperity to much of China. But by the end of the 1st century BC, intrigue at court had undermined the emperor's authority. Wang Mang, related by marriage to the imperial family, became de facto regent in 1 AD after the death of Emperor Ai. Enjoying a reputation for virtue and devotion, he gained power at court, and in 9 AD he formally deposed the Han dynasty, proclaiming a new dynasty called Xin, meaning new. Once he was crowned emperor, Wang Mang attempted a series of radical reforms, partly inspired by Confucian texts and visions of an egalitarian society. These included banning slavery, redistributing land, nationalizing large private estates, initiating monetary reforms, and setting fixed prices for key necessities. In practice, his reforms met fierce opposition from the great landowning families and officials who had no desire to relinquish their privileges. Meanwhile, catastrophic natural disasters, including disastrous Yellow River floods, triggered famine and peasant uprisings. One of the largest insurgent groups, known as the Red Eyebrows, openly challenged Wang Mang's regime. Over the next few years, the empire spiraled into chaos. In 23 AD, the capital Chang'an fell to rebel forces, and Wang Mang was killed in the imperial palace. His reign lasted only 14 years, but it was a fascinating episode in Chinese history, temporarily halting the Han dynasty until it was eventually restored by a Han prince, Lu Xiu, later Emperor Guangwu. Posterity remains divided in its view of Wang Mang. Many considered him a treacherous usurper, yet others see him as a visionary trying to remake an unjust society, ultimately failing due to the elite's resistance and the misfortune of natural calamities. Around 10 AD, in yet another region of the world, a distinct chapter of Hellenistic history drew to a close. 3 centuries earlier, Alexander the Great's conquests had paved the way for the formation of numerous Hellenistic kingdoms in the Near East and Central Asia, including those in northwestern India. Over time, several Greco-Bactrian and Indo-Greek dynasties governed these areas, fostering a remarkable fusion of Greek culture with local Buddhist and Hindu civilizations. By the dawn of the 1st century AD, only one small Greco-Indian kingdom remained in the Punjab region, in modern northwestern India and eastern Pakistan. Its rulers, Strato II and possibly Strato III, governed from their capital at Sagala, issuing bilingual coins in Greek and a local script, revealing the continuity of the Hellenistic legacy. Their power, however, was precarious. Attacks from Indo-Scythians, Sakas, and Indo-Parthians significantly weakened the region. Around 10 AD, the Indo-Scythian king Rajuvula conquered the last remaining territories of Strato II, ending the final vestige of Greek rule in India. With this event, Greek political influence in India vanished for good, though Hellenistic cultural and artistic influences lingered long afterward in the kingdoms that emerged, most notably in Buddhist art of the Gandhara style, where Greek elements are clearly visible in the figurative depictions of the Buddha. Politically speaking, however, the end of the Indo-Greek state marked the definitive conclusion of the Hellenistic era that had begun with Alexander the Great, whose former territories had been subsumed in turn by Rome or by other regional powers. The decade 1 to 10 AD thus stands out as a span dense with defining events for the ancient world's subsequent evolution. On one hand, the Roman Empire appeared at the peak of its might under Augustus, uniting vast lands in the Pax Romana. On the other, this peace could be disrupted at any moment. In the Balkans, the Great Illyrian Revolt exposed the deep discontent among subjugated populations. In the north, the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest revealed that Rome's invincibility had limits. In the Middle East, Judea became a province directly administered by Rome, a move that ignited a spark of religious and national resistance set to intensify in the following decades. Meanwhile, in China, the same decade saw the temporary downfall of the Han dynasty through Wang Mang's usurpation. His experiment in reforming and reorganizing the Chinese state remains one of antiquity's rare examples of such a sweeping social revolution. Yet without elite support and lacking sound crisis management, coupled with severe natural disasters, his reign collapsed, leading to famine and rebellions until the Han dynasty was restored a few years later. In India, the fall of the last Hellenistic kingdom marked the final disappearance of Greek power there, leaving only cultural and artistic legacies to mingle with the new political context shaped by Indo-Scythians, Indo-Parthians, and later the Kushan Empire. Viewed as a whole, the decade 1 to 10 AD was characterized by major realignments and transitions. Stability, whether Pax Romana or the Han legacy, rested on delicate balances. Wars, rebellions, exiles, and usurpations proved that peace was never guaranteed but hinged upon leadership virtues, elite cooperation, tensions among peoples, and sometimes the unforeseeable force of natural calamities. The relevance of these events for our modern world can be approached from multiple angles. Large empires and cosmopolitan societies in antiquity grappled with challenges similar to those we face today. Governing ethnic and cultural diversity, coping with economic crises and social inequality, and practicing skillful diplomacy at state frontiers. The reality that a powerful empire may simultaneously confront local wars, natural disasters, and internal conflict resonates in the present day, when globalization introduces fresh vulnerabilities. Ovid's exile suggests that freedom of expression and cultural output might be curtailed by political might, yet it also underscores the irreplaceable role of the arts in preserving the human spirit, even under severe duress. Wang Mang's story reminds us that well-intentioned yet radical reforms can fail if lacking a solid base of social support and a robust strategy for external crises. The Judean Revolt foreshadows the religious and identity conflicts that would continue shaping that region across the centuries. Finally, the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest effectively established a cultural and linguistic boundary between Latin and Germanic worlds, echoing even in modern Europe. Hence, history shows that events within a single decade can have repercussions lasting millennia. The lesson of this span is that any grand political structure, no matter how imposing, relies on fragile balances and can be shaken by internal rebellions, poor governance, or a single decisive defeat. At the same time, transformation and innovation can emerge in unexpected places, radically reshaping society, just as Wang Mang attempted to do in China. It is our hope that this journey through 1 to 10 AD, surveying major developments in diverse corners of the ancient world, has offered a clear perspective on the interconnectedness and tensions that mark the beginning of our era. Despite being condensed into just 10 years, these events made a lasting impact on subsequent ages. They remain pivotal landmarks for understanding how the past continues to shape both the present and future. We close this documentary with an invitation to reflect on how history still leaves its imprint on the world we inhabit. The happenings of the first decade after Christ underscore that the decisions of rulers, the response of peoples to injustice, and the power struggles that ensue can alter the course of civilization in ways that reach far beyond a single generation. Thank you for following this presentation. We invite you to explore additional documentaries delving into other fascinating and meaningful eras in human history. If you enjoyed this content, please leave a like, tell us in the comments which events impressed you most, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating documentaries. History remains alive through those who choose to discover it and pass it on.